Uh, don't stop writing, for goodness sake. Write and write and rewrite and rewrite and re-edit. And don't think when you've finished and you think it's brilliant, don't think that's the end of the process, because it'll be another 2 years before it's brilliant, or before it's ready. Write and rewrite and rewrite and recheck. But don't stop doing that. Don't stop, and don't lose enthusiasm for doing that, because that's your baby. The whole manuscript, the whole story is yours, and that's yours forevermore.
Everybody, and welcome to Unfiltered Voices, the podcast that is all about busting the myth that self-published is second-rate. I'm Kelly Nissen. I'm an author coach and a self-published author, and I'll be talking to authors, illustrators, and other self-published industry professionals about their choices, their journeys, and everything in between. Published as N.J. Edmunds, Nick Edmunds lives in Stirling, Scotland, with his wife Helen and their spaniel. After decades as a doctor, he stopped telling the truth. Now free to invent, he often draws inspiration from countless interactions with people. His Flint and Masson crime novels, Miles Away and Flowers for the Slaughterman, are set in 70s and 80s Scotland, while Ragged Island, also a crime novel, speculates on a dystopian near future that might or might not result from recent real geopolitical events. It's always a stuff up. Nick's short stories and anecdotes appear in print and online journals. So Nick Edmunds, welcome to Unfiltered Voices.
Good morning, or good evening. It's morning for me. It's still dark outside.
And early evening for us.
Good evening. Good evening to all of you. Yes.
Anyway, welcome. So Nick, Flowers for the Slaughterman which is your most recently published book, and is already receiving great reviews, with phrases like clever twist and kept me in suspense till the end. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book, which is the sequel to Miles Away?
Of course. Thanks for the introduction. As Kelly said, I'm Nick. My first book was Miles Away. That's the first in the series that I never intended to start. But I can't really tell you too much about Flowers of the Slaughterman without telling you at least a sentence about Miles Away, which introduces the character Flint, who at that time is just leaving school and going to university, and is a troubled lad, troubled by memories from the past which come to him at night, and he doesn't know why he has those fleeting memories. But in the end, he eventually joins up with a young cop called Masson, Craig Masson, Masson. It's often pronounced by people who dinna ken better, like people who are not from Scotland, as Mason, but it's Masson, sorry. Craig Masson is a young cop who feels a little sorry for Flint, but then finds he has to believe some of his outlandish stories, and together they unmask a serial killer in a roundabout way, an amateur way. And then they part ways, hoping never to see each other again because they're both traumatized. Flowers for the Slaughterman, I decided, well, people said to me, I hope there's a follow-up. How are you going to do that? I don't see how you can follow it up. So I thought, no, do I? And I sat on it for a couple of years. And then thought, no, they're quite nice characters and people seem to like them. So I sat for a little while concocting a way of bringing them back together. And Flowers for the Slaughterman picks up about 4 years later when they haven't seen each other for quite a long time, and Masson visits Flint at his home. He lives in rural Scotland. Masson, by this time, is working in a city called Aberdeen, which many of you have heard of. Pardon me. He visits him because he wants Flint's help, because Flint's previous experiences with nocturnal experiences, call them dreams, but he has become adept at hypnosis. And Flint is convinced that a man who's been jailed awaiting trial in Aberdeen for murder, Flint is convinced that the man is innocent, and is convinced it has something to do with this accused man's dreams, which have led him to believe he has murdered somebody. And reluctant Flint eventually gives in and gets involved because he can't resist it. And they move on from there, visiting Aberdeen, Dundee, various places in Scotland, and eventually, well, you'd have to read the book to hear what happens, but there are some interesting, I hope,
I was
events.
just going to say, don't tell us the ending.
No.
I mean, that sounds fascinating. I love that you obviously, well, maybe you know, with Miles Away, you sort of tied it up nicely at the end, and then, you know, the fact that you actually had to go, well, okay, people want to follow on and a sequel, you have to sort of untie that nice little ending and start them off again, which you've obviously done.
But to some extent, that's what I enjoy about the writing process most of all, is when you hit a roadblock, you realise, oh, wait a minute, they're supposed to. There's one bit in the book where I want them to go from Aberdeen to Dundee, but I've no reason why Masson, who's a working cop in Aberdeen, could possibly spend time in Dundee. So I have to invent something that happens to him, that takes him. And those ruses that you have to invent but make them believable.
Yes.
I enjoy coming up with those sort of excuses to change the narrative.
That's I mean, that's part about your writing process there. So I'm going to skip forward to the next question and come back to the other one in a sec. Seeing as you've started talking about your writing process, you said you obviously enjoy the unraveling and the sort of the problem solving to make your fiction sound real and believable. The job of a good fiction writer is to create a world, but make it a world that is still believable, so you're credible. So can you tell us a little bit more about your writing process then?
It's definitely evolved. I'm only recently at the stage where I can say over the years, because I've only been doing this 4 or 5, well, 5 or 6, it might be 6, maybe 7 years now, actually, since I retired, and wasn't at a loose end at all. I've hundreds of other things, but I decided one night I was going to write something down because I had lots of ideas. And it came initially from what was going to be a short story, because I wanted to write something, and I tried to think. I've written hundreds and hundreds of factual things over the years. I worked as a doctor, and I spent years telling the truth, and I did. I mean, you can't tell lies. You have to be willing. Every little tiny decision you make, you have to be willing to stand up in court and defend it. And every word you write has to be the truth. And it was quite liberating to think, make shit up, and let's do stuff, and let's invent things. I wanted something, and I began to think, if I'm going to write something, I've never tried writing fiction ever in my life before. And then one of those bing moments, I did. I wrote a fiction story in my final year school exam, English exam. Um, I had 20 minutes left at the 3 hour sitting of the exam to do the last question, and it was make up a story. Do what they called, I think they probably called it composition or something or other. You had to invent something or other and write it in nice sentences. And I had absolutely nothing in my head about what I could write. There were obviously none of the other questions that suited me. And for some reason, an idea came to me, and it was about hypnosis. I'd never heard of hypnosis before. Well, I'd heard of hypnosis. I knew nothing about hypnosis. I'd never studied hypnosis or read about it. But I had this idea, well, okay, somebody gets hypnotized, and then when they get hypnotized, they have to be unhypnotized to let them carry on as normal. What about somebody who's forgotten? The hypnotist forgets to unhypnotize him, and then hypnotizes him again the next time, so he gets a double dose. He gets an overdose of hypnosis. So absolute nonsense. But I wrote this crazy story about this happening to a man, and he went mad and he caused a car accident or something or other, and I can't remember how it finished. But I got an A for the exam, so I thought, well, that must have been okay, whatever I did. So I began to think about, well, how can I build on that, something about hypnosis? And I thought, well, I joined a writing group online, an online start writing fiction thing, which is tremendous. And they were all saying, do flash fiction, do short stories, write a novel, do this, do that. Well, I'll start somewhere in between. I thought, well, I'll try and write a short story based on that idea. And that actually became Miles Away in the end, about 3 years later. I'm probably rambling too much now. You asked me about writing process. Do you want to know how I actually go about starting and getting on?
I suppose, I mean, that taps into the other question that I had to you about where you draw inspiration from, because we're people watchers, right? And for you, you said that retirement's freed you to make stuff up, but it's all, everything that we write's always grounded in some sort of reality and some sort of truth. So I think that the question was about where you get your inspiration. So I suppose your inspiration is part of your writing process as well. Is that, how do you actually know that that particular idea has legs to turn into a full-length novel?
One of the very first things I learned from writers groups and any little bit of it was write what you know. I expect it's probably the first lesson everybody hears. Write what you know. And I apply that, not to the letter, but I choose my settings in places that I know. I choose what's happened to people by thinking back, oh, I knew somebody that something happened to, and they lived in a certain sort of place and they looked a bit like that. So I form characters about people, usually a mishmash of various people. Obviously, you make them different, but somebody might live in a particular place that I remember in childhood, or from my university days, or from later on. And I draw inspiration from ideas for stories quite often from some of the things people have told me in complete confidence in the surgery. Obviously, I cannot write those things down, and I never would, but some of the incredible stories you are told, and I can never repeat that to anybody because that's between you and me and the four walls of this room we're in. But that's incredible. And you might share it with a colleague. Did you know that so-and-so had, we were GPs, so we were all looking after the same people. So it was okay to share that way. But never did it go anywhere else, and or could it? But the stories were a tremendous source of inspiration. The scrapes people get into, and just the human dramas that people force on each other, are a lovely place to draw on, and characters as well. I was thinking about a character this morning. A friend of mine sent me a picture yesterday of himself, and it's a tremendous portrait of the young, thin-looking. He's an Italian Scot. He's thin face, and he had a I don't know if it was a fedora hat or a. He just looked like a gangster. I messaged him back. Are you auditioning for Sopranos? And ha ha ha. If only I could. And he said, I'd have to be a crook though. So I said, I'm going to give you an Italian name. And we batted back and forth, making up a character about him. He's not a writer. He will never write anything, this guy. He's a computer man. But I've now got an idea that I could bring him in, not him, bring this Italian. Okay, I'll tell you, he's probably going to be an exiled gangster from Glasgow who's been thrown out by the Glaswegian Italian community for some misdemeanors, which I'll make up. And he finds himself in another town in Scotland. And I think I might bring him into the next book, to be honest, because he would fit. So I've got a picture of him in my head. So that's some the sorts of ways I make things up is by basing things on people I know and people I've met and ideas that come.
Yeah. So I suppose your part of your writing process is you keep an eye on what's going on, and you take little bits of things that are interesting and mold them together.
Yeah, I do. One tip I got early on as well is when ideas come to you, write them down.
Yes.
And they're myriad funny little things happen to all of us all the time. And if I'm in the mood, I'll just make a wee note of it on my phone.
Yeah.
It might just be a phrase that somebody says, or something came to me the other day. This really happened to me. We were driving down a road when I was it must be 40 years ago. It was a rainy, bendy road. And we went round the bend. The road was really soaking wet, and there was a child's teddy bear lying in the soaking rain on the middle of the carriageway. And the images just stuck with me. I'm going to bring that into a book somewhere, or something I write one day. The idea. So I made a wee note. Teddy bear lying in the wet. So, but those little things, you can't possibly write a story about that, but somebody might see that out of a car window one day, and I'll be able to picture that and describe it.
And you just sort of, bring it in, which is, when people say all fiction writers, that there is a piece of themselves or some of their experience in there, and it doesn't have to be a huge autobiography or one single person's entire story. It might be just a little spark, right? And a way that they look at somebody or something like that. But observe and notice and write things down. I'm really bad at that. Like I see something, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll remember that. I know I won't. I never do. But
the infuriating ones are the things that come to you at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're, oh God, that's great, I'm going to write that down, and then you've forgotten it. Well, I've forgotten it in the morning when I get up. And what was that? And it frustrates me for a couple of hours, and then
and then if I remember it and I go to write it down, it's never quite as exciting when I write it down. So, but it is just that jotting down those little notes, like you said, teddy bear on the road in the wet. So, talking about Miles Away. So your first book, that was traditionally published in 2022. And you described that publishing process in 3 words: enlightening, inspiring, and frustrating. So could you tell us a little bit more about that without perhaps naming names? And then by association, given the frustrating element, if you were in charge of the publishing industry, what would be the first change that you would make?
Well, yes, I read that question. You said that might be one of the questions, and I I put off, and like I usually do, I put off until later on in case it never happens. So now you've caught me.
And
Enlightening, I
frustrating.
suppose, because it was completely new to me. I knew nothing about publishing. In fact, when I first started writing, it was almost. I mentioned before I joined that writing group, and it's all online, and we communicate. And I was probably several months into it before I thought some of these people actually think there's going to be a book or something. And how does that happen? And, oh yeah, publishers. What are they? It never occurred to me that something might be published. I didn't start out with that in mind. But then well, I suppose the first time I had to start thinking about it was when a friend said, well, there's this little publisher down in the south of Wales who's putting together, this was during lockdown, he's putting together an anthology of short stories written about lockdown. Not about lockdown, but just something that has to do with people being shut away.
Yep.
And the person in the group said, anybody can submit a wee story if they want to. So I sent one off, and this publisher liked my little bit. He was quite good at not interfering. He let me write what I wanted to write, and he didn't change it all. And which I thought, well, that's quite good, because I thought if he was going to publish it, it'd be all completely different.
Yeah.
So he let my words stay on the page, and in a conversation that we had about acknowledgements, I think it was, what do you want me to write? Do you want me to put your name in the acknowledgement or anything about you? So, and I said, he said, for example, are you a writer? Do you normally write? And I said, well, I've written this so-called book now, but I don't know. I doubt I'm going to do anything about it. Oh, tell me about that. So I told him the outline to Miles Away, which I think was called Miles Away at that time. And he said, oh, that sounds great. And I said, send me it down. And it was sort of a big gulp moment. I said, what do you mean, send you it? I mean, I haven't finished. Well, I have finished, but and I panicked. I said, well, send it down to me and I'll have a look at it. So I thought, I didn't know quite what to think. And what does this mean? Does this mean my book's going to be published? And I got sort of excited for about a couple of days, and I tidied it up, what I'd done, and thought, this is absolutely terrible. Read back through it. This is absolutely awful. Sent it off. And of course, I didn't hear anything for about 5 months.
Yes.
And out of the blue, I got a phone call from him saying, if you did this and you did that, I would have another look at that. I'd forgotten all about it by that time. And so we batted this thing back and forward. Every time he phoned, I began to think, I better learn a little bit more about what does publishing mean? And then when he started about a year down the line of saying, if we give you a contract, I was like, a contract, what's that? So I had to learn what a contract was and what it meant. So you then have to learn what copyright is, and that's where I'm not an expert on the publishing industry at all. But I suppose, so enlightening, I think that probably covers it. It opened my eyes to a whole new world, and you realise there are these people who do nothing but take other people's books and turn them into something, or eventually put them in front of a bookstore or a reader. I just hadn't thought that process through before. And what was the next word again? Sorry, it was
inspiring.
Inspiring. I think just like that publisher who went on to be my publisher, who my publisher. It sounds fantastic, doesn't it? He was inspiring in that when you somebody who knows about a subject talks about a subject, I find that inspiring. I think, oh, it's a great, I'll put it on more. And I didn't want to be a publisher. I didn't want to learn all about the publishing industry, but I find this is fascinating. Hearing people talk about things they know all about. So I suppose that's where the inspiring thing came from. Frustrating came from, well, I sent it off to him the very first draft, and it was 5 months before I heard anything. And I'd forgotten about it by that time. And it was probably 2.5 years, or it was probably 2 years before he said, right, I'm going to send you a contract to sign. And so 2 years to that. And by this time, I'd rewritten the book 4 times. I'd actually given up, and I'd written the first draft of Ragged Island, which was my other book, which was the next book. I'd written another draft of that because nothing's going to happen with that. But I quite like writing these things. I'm not going to give up writing. And okay, it's never going to be published, but I'm going to keep writing. So I'd written another book by the time he said, all right, yeah, we're going to go ahead with this Miles Away thing. So then it was all back to sort of excitement about that again.
Yeah.
And the frustrating bit was afterwards. I wasn't deflated by it at all. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the whole experience of seeing the book out there and talking about it. Didn't sell many, but he said, well, are you going to write another one? So I said, well, I hadn't really thought. I've got this other book, Ragged Island, that I'm more interested in at the moment because I've been concentrating on that. So he said, well, send that over to me and let me have a look at that. Oh, another 6 months went past, and he got back to me and said, oh, I'm not sure. It's good, but it's so different from Miles Away. It doesn't seem to tie in. I said, it's nothing to do with Miles Away. It's not a sequel. It's so far removed. It's set in the future, this one. Because I thought, I've tried the past, I'll try the future now. And I said, have you actually read it? He said, well, no, but I looked at it. 6 months. I just not even fucking read it. And so I said, anyway, what about, well, you sent me that. You were going to look at a sequel. I mean, yeah, I did. I've got a draft first. Oh, send me that one. So another 6 months went by. And then on one of those 6 monthly conversations, he said, I should tell you, we're possibly moving out of publishing into more the software side of the publishing industry. But I thought I should just give you the heads up on that. But if we did do that, we would definitely get your 2 books out before we do that. So, but what I'm saying is, I'm not going to give you a long-term commitment or contract. I said, that's fine. I'm not looking for anything long-term. I'm too old for anything long-term anyway. So I said, oh, well, that's good. You're going to look at both my books. Absolutely, absolutely. So 6 months later, he changed his mind. He was back into publishing again. So I said, oh, well, that's great. Where are you with the 2 books? Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten about them. So he'd done nothing at all. But he's a lovely man. A nice bloke. But in the end, I chatted to some friends, and they said, if you want to see those books out, you've got another choice. You could go and just self-publish. And I start to think, well, if I self-publish a sequel to Miles Away, what am I going to have to do? How can I publish a sequel when the number 1 in the series is by a different publisher? So I got back to the publisher, and he said, oh, well, we could release you from the contract, but you'd have to republish Miles Away from scratch with your own new cover and all your new copyright and all your new information and a new ISBN number and all that process. And by the way, we own the cover image, so you'll have to have a new one and design a new one. So basically, I'm left with a book that I've got a sequel, which I thought is good and ready to go, but I can't do anything with it because. So I basically went to what's the Association of Authors, or there's an organisation for authors that I paid some money to to join, and I was so glad I did because they gave you free legal advice about contracts, and they steered me through the process of getting out of the contract,
Perfect.
which
Yes.
happened. But then I was sort of square one again. I had Miles Away, which the old version, and I had to republish the new version before I could even move on to the next one. So that was where the frustrations came in. And I did find that once, it's probably my nature, I'm not a control person, but if I'm in charge of something, at least I know it's going to get done.
Yes.
May not be done well, but at least I know it's going to get done. And I quite like that aspect of the self-publishing thing. If I don't like the cover, I'm not having that cover, I'm having a new one. Or if I don't like, I can change things myself. Or if I don't agree with what the editor says, or stuff you, I'm leaving that in because I write books that are. I should warn. Please, everybody that listens to this, read my book. But books, but they're Scottish books. There's some Scottish dialect in them, and people have tried to persuade me to take some of it out. It's not heavy on it. It's not heavy on it at all. Like the odd comment, oh, I struggled a bit with the dialect. I think you should probably tone that down.
No.
I am writing about Scotland. I'm not going to write it in home counties English to be read by Londoners. I'm not so. I like that control. I can say no. If I don't sell as many books, that's my problem. I don't really mind too much about that, because I'm in a very fortunate position that I'm not doing it for a career. I'm not doing it to make money or to live on. I'm doing it as a an enthusiastic hobby and a pastime, and it's something that's got its teeth into me. So,
I love it. You've made that decision, and you can wear the consequences, but still be proud of your book because you made that decision and you stood by what you wanted for
I
them.
think
And I'm
that's the
like,
satisfaction.
you know what? Don't take the dialect out. Let readers use it as a learning experience to work it out. We shouldn't be handing readers everything on a plate. I don't
Well,
think.
I don't think so. I don't think so. No,
So
I'm not. I'm not a patient person, and
yeah,
the frustration. Uh, I think my all my working life, things have to get done, and they have to get done now, more or less. Things can't wait. Medicine doesn't work like that. You can't wait and think about it, and I'll get back to you in 6 bloody months. You have to do it now. So I can't work that way. So I think that's why the frustration came in.
So is there a change that you would make if you were, in charge of the publishing industry?
I would abolish the word bestseller. That
Oh, thank
annoys me.
you.
There are
Yes.
so many books. The number one bestseller. This is the bestseller. New York bestseller. London bestseller. They can't all be the bestseller. I mean, there's so many of them claim to be a bestseller, and charts for these things. Amazon's a whole different thing, but I would. Oh, yeah, I'd quite like to abolish Amazon. I would change Amazon, but I'm not a megalomaniac. I'll never do that. But no, these sort of ranking books by number of reviews and number of readers and number of sales, ranking the quality of books. It'd be like saying a treatise on the physiology of lichen,
Mm.
that's a really boring book. It's not a really boring book to people who've spent a career learning about the physiology of lichen on the tree. But it's not going to sell many books. Doesn't mean it's a bad quality book. And I think the same goes for fiction. The sort of obsession with sales, I understand why the publishing industry wants to do that, but maybe they should look at not trying to be so big and so dependent and having so many, being so top heavy in lackeys and gatekeepers.
Yes, yeah.
um,
Definitely the whole gatekeeper thing in certain genres is huge. But I think the industry is struggling big time. But it's hard. They need books that are going to sell, and they think they know which ones are going to sell, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
yeah, yeah.
I'm not a marketing person, so I don't know. But
No.
I agree with you 100% about that bestseller status. Every time somebody comes to me and says, "Oh yes, here's my bio, best-selling author," I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to leave that out. Unless you are genuinely a best-selling author in your own right. Yeah, I could bang on about that for ages. So you mentioned when you filled in my form, and I know you don't necessarily want to go the political way, but one of the questions that you put on there was that you feel, or a statement, you feel that people in the industry are going the same way as politicians are going. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all about prodding the dragon on this show, so
Yeah.
let's do a
Yeah.
little bit of that.
No, I'm uh, politicians, love them or leave them. I think there's now an industry producing politicians out of universities, and there aren't many people making decisions on behalf of millions of other people who have really any life experience or knowledge of the subject that they're actually trusted to manage. They're just out of university. They've done a degree in politics and you said marketing. It might well be marketing. They've done a degree in nothing to do with life, and 5 years later, they're in charge of the health department, or they're in charge of social security or something. But the analogy coming toward, using that against publishing, probably is my reverse ageism. It seemed for a brief spell during all those 6-month gaps in the Miles Away story, I flirted with trying to attract an agent, because people said, you've got to have an agent, you've got to have an agent. So, well, I'll get an agent. I'm not paying anybody. So that was another rule I always have. I'm not paying anybody for anything. So how do you get an agent? Well, you have to send them your work and ask them if they want to take you on. That sounds easy. So I sent out to half a dozen. And then, no, you need to send it to the ones that fit with your life and your story and you have to fit yourself, or you have to make a good connection with that person. So you read their profile and you look online and you study their interests and what they like. And they're all, this is not sexist or ageist, but they're all wee lassies just out of school. They're all, they're just this gallery of nice artful photographs taken of people in their nice backgrounds and their diplomas in this and their diplomas in that. And they're all about 30. They've not. And to me, I was flogging a dead horse because I'm an old crust, and they're never going to take me on, and they didn't. And I thought, oh, stuff that. And that's another thing. The publishing industry has introduced this layer of not trying to degrade them in any way, but minions or a huge lower level that you've got to try and break through if you're going to get up the pyramid in publishing. So they've got to be one of these agents for presumably a long time before they ever move on somewhere else. And it sounds so weighted against the actual people who are doing the writing. And the quality, the chances of something quality getting through, awful layers and layers of fishing net that you're trying to bang your nose against the wall. Sorry, I'm using too many odd metaphors. But anyway, that's what I meant. It's like politics in that way. You get into publishing by doing a publishing degree or a degree in arts and management or something, or whatever you do, and then you're in charge from that. You're in charge of the people doing the work. The health service is the same, by the way. The health service is the same. So
I think it's not specific to politics. There go my dog. I think it's sort of across the board. You've self-published 3 books now, so
3 books. Yeah,
3 books. I'm hoping that you're going to keep going with that. You've got other books on the sort of the burner, as it were. What advice would you give to people who are sort of starting out and maybe thinking about self-publishing or traditionally publishing?
Try different things, because you don't have to stick with Amazon if you want to put a book out that way. Don't stop writing, for goodness sake. You write and write and rewrite and rewrite and re-edit, and don't think when you've finished and you think it's brilliant, don't think that's the end of the process, because it'll be another 2 years before it's brilliant, or before it's ready. Write and rewrite and rewrite and recheck, but don't stop doing that. Don't stop, and don't lose enthusiasm for doing that, because that's your baby. The whole manuscript, the whole story is yours, and that's yours forevermore. Look after it and make it, bring it up like a child. So don't stop writing and keep going. Explore different ways of doing the self-publishing thing. I divide into writing the book and getting it ready, whether you involve a professional editor, which that's probably the one expense. I said I don't pay for anything, but I do pay, and I got to know somebody who was in editing, and it's fantastic what you get back. I never thought of that. And thousands of things come back that you have to rejig, rethink, take out all the offensive things that you never thought were offensive to anybody, and then I have a wee think and think, no, I'm going to offend them. And that's, you can make up your own mind on it, but you get a different viewpoint. You realise that the editor is very knowledgeable, but also they're another reader.
Yes.
Get a few other people to read it for you as well. I'm lucky being in that group, because I can volunteers from the group. I'll say, does anybody fancy having a wee read through my next manuscript? Blah blah blah. As long as you're happy to at least give me a little bit of feedback, whether it's I hated that or I couldn't get more than 10 pages in. But at least tell me what you think. And you get some feedback that way, and even the negative feedback is a positive result as far as I'm concerned. It's because that's I've got to make that better. So share it with as many people as you're able to. Stay away from people who pester you day in, day out with AI generated. Nowadays, AI generated. I had one this morning. I came across Flowers for the Slaughterman. Oh, what a fantastic book. I think this could go so-and-so. And they started off, Dear NJ, my writing name is NJ Edmunds. They haven't even bothered to look up that I've got a name. And I had two in the last month, books that I had nothing to do with. They've obviously got their algorithms that they use. I've got my name mixed up with somebody else's book. So yes. I had one that was pestering me yesterday for a book about golf courses of Britain and Ireland, your hole-by-hole guide. I thought, I must admit, I had a little bit of fun. I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more," because I thought, you know what they would say next. And so their algorithm came back with more shite. And in the end, I said, "There's just one flaw," and left it at that. And blowing down the moon got back, or the purported person got back to me this morning before I started this, saying, oh, thank you for pointing that out. Can you expand on just what that is? So I said, I've never heard of golf courses, but no, that had nothing to do with it. Just stop pestering me. Go away. I'm not going to answer that one again. But that was cruel of me to do that. But I'm doing it to a machine. At least I'm helping to educate their automated learning systems, or whatever they call themselves.
And the way I look at it, while you kept them amused with answering your questions and that sort of thing, they weren't pestering somebody else who might have been more gullible. So that's my mode of operation when you get the scam callers on the phone, actually, is I'll see how long I can keep them online so that, you know, they don't ring somebody's grandmother and scam them out of thousands of dollars. Yeah, I think there's a lot of unethical people around. Be discerning, surround yourself with like-minded people, you know, who can give you feedback and good feedback, not just, oh yeah, I loved it. And maybe they did, and that feedback's nice, but it's not going to help you move forward.
But
I want to ask about the Dr. Edmunds Anecdotes that you write. It's an ongoing series of short pieces. I saw that in your bio, and I'm like, I have to ask about that because I just love the title.
Right.
So just talking to you today, I can sort of imagine what it might be about, but do tell.
I mentioned earlier that I write little bits down here, like the little teddy bear in the rain, and there's I like to go out socially now and again with some mates and sit in the pub and have a beer, and you find yourself, oh God, I remember that. Oh, and I tell you what happened to me 20 years ago, and you find yourself telling a wee story, and you have a laugh, and then you forget about it, and then 5 years later, you'll be in a different place with a different person, and you tell the same story again. He said, God, I'd forgotten about that. Oh my God. And I wrote one or two of them down that I thought about it. And I thought, there's so many of these things that they happen to everybody all the time. And they make nice little, interesting little, they're not stories. They are, but they're not. And I mean, I wrote one a friend of mine publishes a magazine about Scotland, basically. It's about Scotland. There's some politics in it, but there's some culture in it and some features on this and features on that. And I mentioned to him, I sent him one of these. I said, look, he's published a few of my short stories over the years. And I said, I've been writing these anecdotes because, in fact, I was sitting having coffee with him, and I was telling him one of these funny stories, and he was telling me some of his. And I said, I've been writing some of these down. Oh, send me a couple. So, and that's where it grew from. I called it an anecdote a day because I was thinking it keeps the doctor away. But he just came up with the Dr. Edmunds Anecdotes, which every issue or two he publishes one of these if I've sent him one, if he thinks it's okay. And there was one recently about having diarrhea on a bus, or at least, at least it's not having diarrhea on a bus, but not having diarrhea on a bus for 4 hours, and holding on for dear life. which actually happened to me in 1983 in a bus journey in Crete, when I was on holiday on my own. And so I wrote this. I told the story in the pub a couple of times. Oh my God, it was awful, and I wrote down, that was one of the anecdotes that went in there. So, but I've got quite a lot. Quite a lot of things that I've written down. There's silly little things like feeding my 4-year-old daughter through a little tiny window because we'd locked ourselves out of the house. Now go and drop down onto the ledge and then go and see if you can find the key. Come back with the key. Oh, well done, well done. Yeah. Oh, thank God she let us in. But these little stupid little things that happen to everybody. But you can make a little funny story out of it, or a little.
Yeah.
He calls them anecdotes, so that's where that came from, and it keeps me writing.
Yeah,
it keeps me practicing, and
because sometimes I find you need a bit of a break, don't you? So if you're writing your next novel or whatever, and you might be stuck, or you just want a bit of a break, so you just write something a little bit different, like one of the anecdotes, one of the little stories or something. But I knew there would be good stuff in that just by the title. And we're nearly done. But right at the start, you held up the cover for Flowers for the Slaughterman, and then you said you would tell us about the cover.
Oh yeah, the cover is what we call a tenement street in Aberdeen, and that there's a story comes out of it, and the cover, musing over what can I use for a cover. One of my daughters lives in Aberdeen, and I went to university in Aberdeen. She went to university later in Aberdeen, so we have a bit of a connection to Aberdeen. And the book is set in Aberdeen, and a very crucial bit is set in a street just around the corner from where that painting is done. And my daughter's quite a talented artist, amateur, and she had that picture in not quite finished form on her easel in her living room. I thought, that's fantastic. I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. I know that's an iconic, there's a crescent street of these grey, dull granite tenement blocks of flats. And that was just lovely. A lovely, I don't know if it's a sunset or a sunrise. It must be a sunset behind it. Excuse me. And it was a striking picture. And that's exactly the cover for the book, because just round the corner, one of the main scenes in Flowers for the Slaughterman happens in the top floor flat of another tenement just round the corner from Wallfield Place. So that's perfect for the book. And I was able to plug my daughters in the acknowledgements as well. So
so your daughter painted that cover.
Yes, she did the original painting and got me out.
Yeah. So that's I think that's just that, like, that little bit of inspiration there as well. Like, you happened to be there, she happened to have the painting and that sort of thing. And
I'd already written a book by that time, and it was just, my God, that's just round the corner from where.
There's my cover. There's my cover. That's fantastic. I've loved talking to you and hearing your stories and your viewpoint on different things in the publishing industry. So, Nick,
other viewpoints are available.
Yes, I feel maybe there might be another show with other viewpoints. But before we go, Nick, where can we buy your books? And where can we find you and purchase your books?
Well, I have a little website called njedmunds.com. njedmunds, all one word, .com. And there are links there, but also searching under the titles of the books, Flowers for the Slaughterman, or under N.J. Edmunds on Amazon, or you can order them through bookstores anywhere. Or likewise, Miles Away, that was the first one. And
That's a striking cover as well.
That's Ragged Island,
Oh, okay. Yep.
which is a completely different book, nothing to do with the series,
Yep.
but a speculative fiction set in. I said I write what I know.
Yep.
I was lying. That says set in Cuba in 2030.
Okay.
I've never been to Cuba.
Yeah. Yeah, but there would be that little spark. Thank you so much for
No, thank you.
coming on early in the morning for you. And I can actually see, just looking out your window behind you, it's lightened up a
It's
little bit.
beginning to get daylight. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to um, getting into it. I'm going to have to read Miles Away first, obviously, before Flowers for the Slaughterman. But I am looking forward to getting into that because the books sound fascinating, and looking forward to seeing.
They're meant to be standalone. There are some references, but you can read them in out of order. But
Yeah.
like all these series, it probably helps to start at the beginning. In fact, a
Yeah.
few people have said, "I'm going back to read Miles Away now," because that sounds brilliant. So,
Oh, there you go. Absolutely. Your next book that you put out, is that going to be part of that series as well, or something different?
I have a vague outline for what I would probably call Flint and Masson 3 at the moment.
Yeah.
A vague outline for it was obviously Flint and Masson and one or two other characters. Some people have got back to me about this one saying you need to expand on that character or
Haha.
you should keep
Yes.
that one in. And right, I want to know more about so and so, which,
Mm.
well, that's great. There's life in that one then. That's good.
Yes.
And as I said earlier, my friend with the hat, my Scottish Italian roots person with the hat, his face is in my mind is going to appear in that book, and I think he's possibly going to be called Vincenzo Serafini or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
We'll have to wait and
But
see.
yeah,
Absolutely. Sounds like you will as well. So thank you, Nick, so much, and we'll keep an eye on what you do next.